And finally, we reached the last weekly newsletter I'm gonna look at today because I am marinating in my own juices and I really need a shower. It's it's really humid outside. Ugh. Anyway, this is probably one of my favorite as well. Like it's a favorite to me since I'm all about Node. Node and JavaScript is like the best thing ever. And yeah, this is the newsletter for Node guys. I was looking through the articles here and I see that one of my first choices, well, there were really only two things that caught my eye here. Mastering async await, which is pretty cool because like there's a few new features well, they're newish, where you can write async code using some new pretty cool keywords like as obviously async and await. And yeah, like I use like I'm gonna be honest, like I can see the benefit and like the new syntax is pretty cool, but it's not like to me there's things that are more important than async await. If we just look at this, I haven't read this yet, but I'm gonna be pretty sure that yeah, here we have some examples. You do a request, and then you have a dot catch, a dot then, and some stuff like that, and then he's gonna yeah, exactly what's gonna happen is that you can see the difference here that you have a function handler up here, and this is not using the new syntax, it's just doing like promise chaining. And you know, the common argument, oh, this is so ugly, it's so unreadable, and then this person, and then you have this async function, which now it denotes to the V8 engine or like the JavaScript engine that hey, this is an async function, and therefore you can now use await. So you do a response, which is going to do this thing here. These two things are equal, and as you can see, it becomes a synchronous thing. And the cool part about this is which is like this is actually pretty useful. You can see that the error handling is happening with a try catch, and here you have to have a catch function afterwards down here, which is once again for some reason people think that that's a nice thing. I I personally don't really have much of a preference. I think this is pretty equal in readability when you know what's going on. But anywho, this article might be they're going to walk us through a few examples, so I'm going to take a look at that. And I mean, obviously, if this is where the trend is going, async in a way, I'll keep on using that. I kind of think, well, what I always think is a little bit funny, I'm going to be honest, is that I'm going to assume that people use these lambda functions here, anonymous functions, as just a way to very easily show, like in a demo situation, that oh yeah, this is the code, and like it becomes very readable for a person who's going to use it, who's going to read it as part of a tutorial. But what I find a lot of the time is that even really experienced JavaScript developers who are talking about all these like new syntax and these cool things like promises and so forth, they don't actually do what I think one of the more fundamental things that you should be doing. Like, why are you making like this is almost a poison in our community, I would say. Like everybody's making like these lambda function, and it's almost like they do it because they have never like it's because it's like it's almost bred into people. I feel like it's might be like you see all these examples of this code and then you just start writing it, but this is actually just a function, so why not make it a named function? This is a single parameter function that takes in an error. You could very easily make this into an error function, and then you could just strip all this out, make this a one-liner, and then it would actually be even less code than this. It would be literally less code. You could do that, and that's why I kind of think that this promise movement or async await movement is getting a little bit like overhyped. I think because I'm trying to. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that to me it looks as if a lot of the people who are talking about oh this is better than that they're focusing on things that are like, we should be focusing on code being brief and like having readability and having reusability, and they want things to read nicer. And yeah, this, I agree, this is a little bit nicer, but if you strip out this try and catch here and you simply put that as a one function thing, which you should be doing in the first place, if you you change that coding practice a little bit, or even make this into a higher order function, you can get this even more reusable, then like this example here becomes fairly trivial. I mean, it does, like, the readability would be, I would even argue that this might become even more readable. And so I see this all the time. I see these my favorite one is when I see like really experienced coders. It's actually, I don't really comment so much on YouTube videos, but the first comment I ever put on YouTube was in response to a really great TikTok. I really liked it. The one thing I saw was that he was talking about ESLinting and like how the importance of linters, and I 100% agree. Linters are really important, but all his examples where he was talking about this exact thing, I saw him keep on doing this, like even in this was happening, but it was also, he also showed me something along the lines where he had created a chain of then calls in a promise, and then he had an anonymous function without any input parameters that called another a promise returning function that also didn't have any parameters. And all he could have done was to just put that as an argument, because that's a higher order function. You can just put the function that you want to be executed as the input. And I argue that even really experienced developers have, like, I don't know why that's happening. I think it's just habit maybe, or like not understanding exactly how the interfaces work. But I try to avoid this as much as possible. I don't see why everything has to be a lambda function. Why do you make it a lambda function? It's actually worse. I mean, if you want to unit test this chain here, that's going to be a horrible experience. I mean, how do you test this error function? If you want to test this, you have to test the whole fucking thing. Everything needs to be tested, because this is just a chain of function call. But if you break this out into a named function, you can in isolation test that function, and then you could catch that problem. And as I said in this tutorial, it makes sense. I mean, I want to be able to read everything. I don't want to have to like reference some external function. But as I said, this is actually the norm. I see this all the time in production code. I think it's really bad. Like, it should not. I think it shouldn't be working. It shouldn't work that way. I do think that's really important. It's yeah. Enough ranting. I'll move on. And then we have this 4 ways of making HTTP requests with Node. This is pretty cool. I'm gonna read that. I wish I had read this just a few days ago. I was doing a code test for a job I'm applying to, and my experience with HTTP, like, usually you don't really, like, HTTPS is important, but like I've never really had the opportunity to get really deep into it when it comes to like Node and so forth. Because most of the time, like, the stuff that I build in Node is either for internal use, or we use like lambda functions for Amazon or Firebase, where all that stuff is taken care automatically by the host, or the provider. So this is going to be an interesting read, and kind of get maybe some tips on how to do this in an effective manner. Like, the basics I know already. Oh, and this is great. Getting some really good examples with pros and cons. Yeah, this is going to be an interesting read. So yeah, this is what I'm going to do next.